Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Dr. Christina Horvath. I work at the University of Bar at the Department of Politics and International Studies and Languages. And I am organizing this series called Botanical Encounters. And this is our fourth session here. And I have a great pleasure to introduce a new speaker who comes today from the Netherlands. So Nicolas Finas is a PhD candidate at the University of Wageningen. And he's also affiliated with an Institute of Biodiversity. And previously, he worked also in Suriname, and he graduated in biochemistry from Northeastern University of China. And he also worked as a guest scholar in New Orleans at the University of Tulane. Is it right? Yes. And so his research interests include one thing that I need to mute my other computer. Because there is some interference. I will do that in a minute. So I would not take too long, but hand it over to him, and he's going to talk about rice fields in Maroon communities in Suriname and French Guiana. And let's welcome him.
So yes, good afternoon, and thank you for coming. As she said, I'm not a native English speaker, so here and there you will hear some Dutch mixed words. My name is Nicolas, and indeed I'm now doing my PhD at the University of Wageningen. I'm also working in Naturalis, and the whole project is sponsored by NWO. Actually, this is a paper it was just accepted, and you can see two women at Okinta. I interviewed her, and the other picture was taken a while ago before we started this project. So the discussion points for today, we'll talk about the history of Suriname, just to give you some background, the history of Maroons in Suriname, rice in Suriname, rice in Maroon communities, and after that we'll look at the different rice names. The history of Suriname, long before colonization, it belonged to the Native Americans, or as we say, the indigenous people. We had Arawaks, Caribs, Wayana, and Trio. Actually, those were the biggest group, but there were other smaller groups. So in 1650, or at least around that time, the English came in and they colonized Suriname between 1650 and 1667. From 1667 until 1954, it was a Dutch colony, and from between 1954 and 1975, we were an autonomous region within the Dutch kingdom. And after that, until present, we are now an independent republic. And basically, you can't look at someone on the street and say you're not a Surinamese. As you can see in this picture, everyone, doesn't matter from where you are, can be a Surinamese. At least they won't notice you until you start speaking. Then they'll know, oh, you're not Suriname. A bit of the demographic of my country. It is almost 174 square kilometers. The population is 580,000. Those are just people that are living in the country. 3% are the indigenous people, because once everybody started coming in, moving in, they moved away to Brazil, to Guyana, French Guiana. So they live mostly in the interior of Suriname. 27% are Hindustani. Those are descendants of Indian indentured laborers that were brought in after slavery was ended. And 37% are Afro-Surinamese, and this group is actually split it in two. You have the Maroons, which are 24% of the total population, and 14% of our Creoles. Those people, the Creole people, were enslaved until the end of slavery in 1873, I think, yeah, 1873. And the Japanese also came as indentured laborers after that, and 14%. 6% is mixed, and the 13% are Chinese that came in as indentured laborers, and now they're coming in as migrants. Descendant of Europeans, and of those descendants of Europeans, the Dutch group is the biggest. Portuguese, Jews also, Lebanese, Haitians, Cubans, and Brazilians. So, like I said, everybody can say, I'm a Surinamese, and unless you start speaking, people will not know you're not. The Maroons, which is the 23% of the population, the total population, are split it into 6 individual groups. We have the Quintis, the Alucos, the Matawai, the Paramacans, the Aukans, and the Saramacans. And here again, unless you start speaking, people will not know you're not a Maroon if you're a Black person. And the bottom picture here, those are actually, everybody is from another group of Maroon, but I can't tell which one is from which specific group. In this card, during slavery, people escaped different routes. And this purple one, they formed the Aukans. The red one formed the Matawai. Blue, can we say blue, and yellow are the Saramacans, and green is the Paramacan group. So that's where, based on the distinction is made on the place of the interior each group is living and the different language they speak. This slide was actually further, but I move it up front because we will talk about rice, and I want to give you a general idea of what rice is. So there are 2 different varieties of rice, or group of rice. You have the Asian rice, which is Oryza sativa, and the African rice is Oryza glaberrima. The Asian rice was domesticated about 9,000 years ago in Asia and transported in the 15th century to Africa. And it's most of the commercial rice or rice we buy in the stores are Asian varieties. And the other one was the African rice was domesticated 3,500 years ago in Africa. And there's not so much global use of it as a variety or as a species. But it is grown in Maroon fields, and actually we found both varieties. This one is the African rice, and those 2 are Asian rice that Maroon farmers are currently farming. So this is a timeline of when rice came into the time that different varieties of rice came to Suriname. Okay. First, like I said in the first slide, or the slide before this one, Asian rice was transported from Asia to Africa, West Africa in the 1400s. Then this transatlantic slave trade started in 1526. If we look at records and what people were eating, we think that it is from this moment. The first boat with enslaved people had rice on it, but we did not find any evidence, so we can't say that as a fact yet, but still looking. In 1665, the Jews were in Brazil, but they were expelled, and they moved with everything they had, enslaved people, all the plants they had, all the cuisine they had, to Suriname. But again, there's no written evidence, so we can't say for sure they moved with rice, but we believe they did. And in 1686, we found evidence that one of the plantation owners was farming rice in Suriname. So actually from this moment, we are sure there is rice. between 1700 and 1830, many slave ships came from West Africa, and we found records that they had rice on them. They brought rice as bulk food for the enslaved people. The legal end of transatlantic slave at the beginning of the 19th century. Legal end of slavery in Suriname, and then the indentured labor started coming in. And they brought their traditional varieties of rice that they used to cultivate in India and in Indonesia. Commercial rices started in the early 1900s. Especially this variety came in, Rexora, which is very important for the Maroon communities. And improved cultivars was sent. We have evidence documented that it was in the 1930s that they sent a bag of Rexora to the Maroon communities from the capital city. Asian commercial wet rice cultivation started in the 1940s. And in the 1980s, we had the Civil War, and people moved as refugees to French Guiana. There were other groups of refugees, also the Hmong people in French Guiana, and they managed to exchange rice with the Maroons. A bit of Maroonage. So people, most of the time you look at Maroonage and escaping Maroons group leaving the plantation and form independent society as they moved in one place at the same time as a bulk of people. But actually that's not the case. It was a process over 200 years. People were moving, different groups were moving, forming alliances with Native Americans. Sometimes they were captured and brought back. Sometimes they worked together to fight against the colonial government. And so we found now evidence that the Afantis, for example, those are people from coastal Ghana, they are still there till date. They went and formed the Aucan group, as I showed a couple of slides ago. The Aucan is one of the big Maroon groups. The Abos, which is Abo Mayor, there's a movie not too long ago, Women King, the Woman King, is about this place, and a group of people that were from there came to Suriname and they escaped and they went to form the Saramakan. And actually there's a village called Abomey still in the interior of Suriname. The Casitos which were people owned by Mr. Castillo. They escaped his plantations, and until now within the Saramakan group, there's one clan called Casito, because they identify themselves as we are the descendants of the group that escaped from Mr. Castillo. And the same goes for those people that escaped from the slave owner Machado. They still call themselves Machao. So now Maroon women within the group of Maroons. Escaping was not easy. The plantation owners, the slave owners had soldiers. They had system in place, making it very difficult for people to escape. And then when you escaped or after you escaped, what would you eat? You needed food to be moving, and men did not do a lot of cooking back then. So they were forced to come back, attack and plunder plantation. Within this whole process of plundering, they captured, because women were not always willing, or they were not, how can I say that? They were not standing in the front row to leave with them. So they were forcefully taken and captured also. We have evidence now that some of them helped plan the escapes once they were away, or some of them, their husband left and then they wanted to go with him, or someone they loved was leaving, so they wanted to go with him. So this was how things were going back then. And the role for women were taking care for the sick soldiers that were fighting. They also were very important oracles, because they could speak with spirits, ancestor spirits, and with the forest spirits, with the forest gods, as they call them. and they would give them insights like, today is not a good day to attack. So they would inform the soldiers, do not attack. The gods does not approve our attack. Or yes, wait, next week you can attack, the god approve. So the women were more the oracle between man and spirits, or man and God. But one very essential role that they had was food supply, preparing food and providing food for the soldiers. So I now have a video of how the women in those days helped plan the escapes and what they did to support escape and food supply.
It's time for me to move on.
We did not say so.
Yeah.
How can I'm not seeing my Christina. Can you help me? I'm not seeing the video is not really. No, I see the video here, but it's not.
Oh, I see. That's very strange. I don't know what to
It's a different
That's the YouTube video.
Yeah. En daarna had je mevrouw die was gevlochten en dan waren die wees achterin. En dan ga ik wezen hoe het gedaan, hoe het was gebeurd. Een voorbeeld hier heb ik geweest. Daar heb ik weer geweest. Dan heb ik het van Maroon. Ik heb het hier. En Maroon is ook niet veel te hebben. Dat een beetje bleef zo had ze dat gedaan. En had ze dat, waar had ze dat gedaan? Op het slavenschip, of in Paramaribo, of in Afrika? In Afrika, oké, ja. Ze hebben dat gedaan. Ja. Ze gaan erin. En dan gaan ze dan weer. Zo. Ja. Is het? Zo gedaan. Nu is het weer. Zo aan het zo. Ze toch een reisplaats zo. En delen dat in zo is voor leuk om toch een beetje reizen met iemand. Zodat ze nu reis hier hebben. Om te bedanken. Dus mevrouw, dat niet genoemd. Weer een beetje. Je hoeft niet veel reizen te hebben. Dat je een goede kan denken. Dus 4 keer dan heb je daar nog een volgende keer of zoveel. Ja. Zo het zeer leuk gedaan. Kijk zo.
So was het gebeurd. De straat in Monica is in je haar, je bocht. Oh, schrik, de uitval toch niet. Je ziet niks, hè? Nee. Zo was het gebeurd. Ik van slapen. Zo was het vooral. Lezen niet van de ja, we vroeger de meeste grote maar nu zijn die jongeren alleen maar lief was, twee en zo, maar die hadden niet meer zo goed. Maar die hebben vroeger mensen blakke comedie, strana comedie, ja. Ja, maar nu is het een beetje makkelijker. Gelukkig is die nog. Zo was het gebeurd. We gaan even allemaal wachten. Misschien wel even dat we naar geboren zien. Ja, nee, zo had die mevrouw bedankt. Is maar dan? Nee, oké. Dus zo was het, zo is het verhaal van haar. Ja, zo is het van mensen gebeurd.
Yes, so this is how they managed to. So how do I go back to the presentation? Yeah. And, yeah, good. Yes, so this process you just saw, you just witnessed, one woman that is highly connected to us is Pansa. She escaped slavery in 17. We'll see a slide about her a bit later. And all those are, we found rice varieties with those women, their name connected to it. So we believe if it happened, as she just showed, we believe if you move 6 million people, there will be some in there that, you know, are brave and courageous enough to take rice with them. They definitely knew what it was, and so they transported it that way. Those were women during slavery. Nowadays, present day women, this is a, how can I move this? How can I cancel? I can't. Okay, yeah, it's still working. Right?
Is it working?
Yes. So this is a good friend of mine, Jeanette. Whenever I'm in Suriname, I visit her rice field all the time. She helps me a lot with translating names, and what she's doing in her field, she's still doing the sowing of all rice varieties. She's still doing the planting and the harvesting. And the reason for this, we believe, during slavery, there was a war going on between, so the men did not have time to be farming on the rice fields with their partner. We also see the same process that a lot of only women are doing the farming in some West African tribes. And in Suriname, it could also be a climate aspect, because the time of harvesting is the same time the men need to be preparing for a new field. It's the dry season that all the crops are ripening or ready to harvest. And that's the same time you actually need to clean and clear a new patch of forest for a new rice field or farming field. Oh, that's not working. Okay. Yes, so we've made also a timeline when Maroon rice, when rice came into the Maroon communities. So there were Maroons when the English plantation started in the 1650s. From that moment on, there were Maroons. So marronage is a process that started very early during the colonial time. We do not know if they had rice with them. And here, Van Sommersdijk, which is the guy that started farming rice in Suriname as bulk food for the enslaved people in 1686. And then the first person that we found a rice that's connected, there's a rice connected to her, that's Miss Say and her daughter Yaya. They escaped slavery in the 1690s. And this is the variety that's called, that's named after Miss Say. There's a variety named after her daughter. She was one of the one of the women that could speak with the oracles. In the 1700s, there's another one, Choa. She escaped. We did not find a variety with her name, but this is the African rice, and her descendants are saying yes, the rice she took with her is the African rice. In 1712, colonial soldiers found huge maroon rice fields, which they had to burn, but they said it's so big we could not burn everything. This is the woman, Miss Panza. She escaped in 1739 and there's a variety still farmed that's connected to her. Rolander collected a specimen of rice, so by now it's for sure there. Maroons escaped from the Tempati region. There was a huge slave revolt, and we believe those two women escaped during that period, and we found rice that is connected to them. And Stedman, which is an important figure in the that helped create the abolishment of slavery, found huge fields in the Kotika region, which is a particular important slave plantation region in Suriname. This is a maroon proficient field nowadays. If you look at it, it seems like it's not structured. There's everything in there. You have maize, you can see maize here. There is rice, there's cassava there. Here you have okra. So they plant everything, peanuts, sugar cane, yam. Everything is in there. And that's me. That's me standing in a rice field. And if you look at rice, if you look at the plants, I'm interviewing two women here and they are explaining to me that we have different varieties of rice. If you look at rice, the plant, you'll think all of them are the same. But then when you look further, you'll see they have over 400 different names. We don't know if all those names represent a variety, but that's with different names, they can keep them separate. So we found black rice. There's one called Strong Love, Mestica seed, Rexora, which we saw came in Suriname in the 1920s. A bag was sent to the Maroons in the 1930s, Miss Panza, and we have one called Baboon. We will see all of them later. So we looked at all this and we thought, well, how is it with the names? Were they invented before marronage or after marronage? What are the names? What are the names connected to? Is there a pattern or a system in the naming? Was there a meeting between all the Maroon women or Maroon groups and they decided this is a pattern we will follow? Is it the same? And if there's a pattern, is this pattern the same in all Maroon groups? And can we also find African retentions in the rice names? So that's the next part of my presentation. So like I said, we collected over 400 different rice varieties. And when we started our rice names database, it had over 800 names. When we translated them, merged here and there, we came up with 284 unique names. And the Saramakan people, they have the most because they do the most farming. The Aukan are the second, and then the other groups, they don't, a lot of them live in the capital, so they don't do a lot of farming anymore. And only 4 names in this group of 284 unique names, only 4 names are shared by all groups. So with confidence, we can say the names were invented after Marronage, because if they were invented before Marronage, then you would find those names a lot more in the groups. But since all the 5 groups we looked in only had 4 names they shared, we said, well, it is after people moved that the names were given. And it's not strange because, like I said before, people moved over 200 years and it was not a process. It is not they did not leave from one place and move into the interior. So most names were given after Marronage. Those are the, when we looked at the names to what they are connected, we found the river otter, and actually this is because of the rice has a long on, just like the river otter, the whiskers of the river otter. If you look at the rice, you'll see it has a spike on the husk, which is, we called it an on. This is the bush pig, and it's the same. There's a spike on the husk of the rice, and that resembles the skin of the bush pig. The baboon howler monkey is the same, but the on of this variety is a bit red, like or brownish, like the skin of the baboon. Then this variety, jaguar, on the husk, it has a couple of spots. I'm not sure if you can see that too clearly, but when you look at it, if you get what, I don't know. I have some varieties here, so I don't know if it's in there. Later you can take a look. And this is a Guinea fowl, and it also has spots, but the spots of the Guinea fowl is slightly different than the spots of the jaguar. And here we see an adaptation because those are Amazonian animals, but the Guinea fowl is an African bird. There are rice names connected to random objects and things, such as a fist, kumabo. The seeds of this variety, you can see it, are quite large. Airplane, that's because it has like wings on the side. This variety has wings on the side. Dabisang, it's an alcohol bottle that was used in the 1900 century. And people looked at it and said, like, this variety looks like the Dabisang. So they called it Dabisang. And this is a bit tricky because it will be expensive. It's a variety. When you sow it, the harvest is huge. It gives a lot of seeds. So people say, well, it will be expensive, or it is expensive. Those rice names are connected to specific groups that escaped slavery. The Bakapaus escaped, and they brought rice with them into the Maroon communities. The Akbos, which are from Abomey, like I explained before, they had a rice variety with them, and they called it after the people that brought it in. And the Mbotomboli, which is Boterbali Creek, those people were seen in the Boterbali Creek. We don't know now where this location is, but they had a rice variety and it is named after them. What's important, or what I find interesting about this, is that none of those groups exist anymore. Like within the Maroon groups, people cannot tell you, I am a descendant of the Akbos. They don't know that because they merged into the Saramakan and the Aukan group. So they don't know that anymore. But we can still see that in the rice names. Rice names connected to other groups and groups of people and countries. The Hindustani rice, kuli kuli. We believe they exchanged this variety with the indentured laborers that came in from India. Japanese sticky rice exchanged with the people that came from Java and Indonesia. This is the Rexora, the variety that came in the 20s. We saw that one before. And this is the Hmong. It was exchanged with the refugees from Hmong in French Guiana, Vietnamese refugees in Guyana. So the exchange process has been going from very long back until recently. Those are rice names connected to women because it's a large group. And you see long hair because of the on the rice. Long hair, like Edith was explaining, women nowadays put in straight hair. So they call this variety after long hair. The Chanchampuna, pubic hair, because of the ons, those ons break off easily. Chechemuya, which means small woman, or is another variety. And white woman, the husk is a bit light brown. If you look at the color. Those are the names of rice connected to specific woman. We saw her before. Say, her rice, Alisi Say. This is Mapansa, escaped, and the Yaya is the daughter of Say. Saw her. Those women were impactful in their community, but their history did not survive. There's no written history of them. But as long as we found the rice connected to their name, we know they were impactful because they brought food for the community they were in. And those two were Sapali and Sana, escaped during the slave revolt in the 1750s. Yaba, we know it's a Ghanaian word meaning woman that's born on the Thursday, but we don't know, was she born enslaved during slavery? After that, we can't find any written evidence. And Ayengina, we don't know what the name means, who she was. She was an Aucan woman because we found those varieties we found in Aucan communities, but the history is somehow it's lost. Or maybe we will find someone that can tell us all of it. And those are young women. Odina is there with her mom here preparing rice. And we found rice that are connected also to those young women. That's Odina, and this is Eva. And those are the varieties that are connected to them. And this can be a case, it's a new variety. It was developed on their rice field. It can be an old variety, but they lost the name somehow. They don't know what the name is, and they say, well, then it's my rice. And the same goes for Eva. And then the African retention words, pende, meaning it's a Mende, it's a word from the Mende language, meaning spotted or striped. And people in Sierra Leone use this as recently as the Civil War in the 19th and early 2000s. When they had to escape into the forest, they planted this rice again. They sowed this rice again because it is ready for harvest within 90 days. We don't know if that's the same case in Maroon communities, but we will test this in the coming period. The word Saka is a general name for rice. Everywhere where Portuguese slave trading posts were, this word was used, and it's coming from the word sakudir, meaning to winnow rice. Because if you're doing trade, you need to be speaking with different groups of people, and it's good if there's one name for everything. So this word, still people don't know that it means rice anymore, but we found a couple that are called Saka as a general name for rice. And the same goes for bongo, but this word is only used within the Saramacan community. The other communities don't really know it. And it means seedlings or children in West Africa, and it's used mostly by the Saramacan community. Those are the groups of names that we found connected to the morphology of the plant and on the color of the husk, female associations. Others are names that we could not translate because somehow the name is lost or the word we don't know what it means. Animal related is a very huge group, specific region or ethnicity, agronomy, male associations. You see the percentage for male association is 6%, and for female it's 28%. well, male don't really do farming. They are not in the rice field. So there's not much connected to them. But every now and then you'll find a woman that loves her husband and she'll say, well, this is a beautiful man, while most varieties are called beautiful women. So every now and then we do find one. And then the second, or I think this was the third question, is the naming pattern. Did we find a pattern? Yes, we found a pattern. This is the pattern that we found, morphology, female association, and the others. And this is how it's spanned out in all the different Maroon groups. So morphology is the highest, but actually it's a bit tricky because, like, for example, we have one variety called red woman. So we scored it in the category morphology because of the red color of the husk, and we scored it also as woman. But if we do not do that, if we use so that's a binary system of naming. If we do not use the binary system, then the female associations are the highest in all the names that we found, in all the 284 names that we found. And that's much or less the case for all the different Maroon groups. Actually, the pattern that we see, others, yeah, it's difficult to translate. So, and we did not find any Aluku farmer to help us translate those names. So, but if we find someone later on, this will come down and then we'll see. You see, it's a bit like in every group, it's more or less the same. And the conclusions, we found 284 unique names. One was documented and 84. New names that I collected, well, me and my supervisor collected in 2021 and 22, 137 new names, and the rest are between 80, 50, and 20 years. Those were names collected by other researchers. Most rice names were invented after Maroon. The naming system is the same for all Maroon groups, like you see in the slide before this one. The system is possibly a mix of West African system, because people escaped from different places and times. When we compare those our names with with what they did in West Africa, we see the women component is jumping out in Suriname, and that's not the case in West Africa. And that's because of the crucial role women had during the struggle for freedom and thereafter. The contact Maroons had with other groups of people, the indentured laborers that came in, and the refugees that they met in the past and in present. And very important is that Maroon history that's actually lost. It wasn't written and people forgot about these stories. We could still see those stories in the rice name. So that's very strong there. I've talked a lot. Thank you for your time, and if there's questions.
Okay, I think it's good. Any questions? Let me pass in the Hello, thank you. That was really interesting. I wanted to ask, there are so many varieties. To what extent are those all varieties that have originated somewhere else and been imported? To what extent have they been sort of locally produced as hybrid, and to the extent that they've been locally sort of originated as hybrids, was that something that was done intentionally and with desired characteristics in mind, or was it more a result of the local geography and conditions?
So we look at that. I have the postdoc partner, and she's looking at the genetics of all the rice. Where did they come from? How did they end up there? So original, there's no rice, no sativa variation in South America. So it is either coming from Africa or from Asia. And yes, she's seen some that are hybrids that were formed or created in Suriname, but that data is not available yet. I know it's there, but you know the specifics I don't know yet. And later, when she's done, there will be more of that in the coming, let's say this year. Yeah.
Any? Joe? Can you pass the microphone to them? Thank you, it's very interesting. And I just want to know what got you interested in this topic.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I'm a Maroon myself. I'm from the Auken group community. So yes, I have this intrinsic. When I was young, my grandma used to take me into her rice field. This is terrible job because you have to harvest within the 12-hour sun in a tropical region. So this is not fun, but you know, that's what triggered me when I saw this position opening. I was like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to know more about my own history, about the history of my people, and yeah.
Okay. Can I ask a question? Yes, so I would like to know how you get rice to store there. So I know that I would buy here, or I could order it on the internet or something like that. But how do you say that this gets exchanged a lot? I guess so. If you want to start the rice field, where do you go to get the rice? Also, I was interested in like the quantity that you can have in the hair, how much you can do with that. Like, would that be enough to feed people for how long time? And yeah, also, do you need a lot of water to grow this rice? So if it's in the forest, is it as wet as we know that rice is often grown in very wet regions? So the two questions.
So the first is, how do you get seeds? Well, the exchange is not structured by the government. If you're my cousin, I walk to you and say, well, I'm starting my rice field tomorrow. Do you have some seeds for me? And then they'll give you a bag and you collect. And within 1 month, you have enough for a whole rice field. Exchange is done a lot. Like if you enter a village, after 6, 7 farmers, you've collected everything that everybody has, because you know they share a lot among themselves. There are some places like where you can buy, but you're not sure if it will grow because after 1 year it doesn't germinate anymore. And the little bit that you put in your hair. So when Mapansa escaped, the story is that the first sowing, they could not eat it because she used that again as a new material, new planting material. The second harvest, they did not eat it. She planted it again. And in the third harvest, they had enough to eat. And yes, and one cycle is about 4 to 5 months. So within 1 year, they had enough of rice to eat. And actually, they commemorate her every year on the 11th of June, I think, and there's a huge rice party and everything is cooked just to remember her work. So yeah, within 1 year you'll have enough from a little bit. Yeah.
More questions?
Is it only rice that it was planted or other things?
It
was just rice that it was planted or other things before the analysis?
Yeah, other things, of course, they have cassava, they have yams, they have okra, they have peanuts. When they found the field I showed in 1712, they even had oranges, they had goats, they had ducks. So yeah, they had a lot of stuff.
Do you have a favorite type of rice? I mean, we've seen so many.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
No, no, not really. I eat all of them.
My question here is,
Have you done interviews with the community?
Yeah.
And then I was just wondering how you structure them or what was or is your methodology, just to understand, because for example, when I do interviews, this is the part that I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
So how helpful they were, or, if you want to tell us a little bit about that.
So I can speak the Maroon speaks 6 different languages, and I can speak them. So I've interviewed them in their own languages, and then I have open questions. They can go any direction, and I will record that. In one instance, if someone start explaining about how to grow it, like this is a wetland variety, I will not stop them. That was not my question. I leave them to explain to me. Yeah. Yes.
Is there any rice named after your grandmother?
No.
Does the rice get exported?
Exported? No, this is just for eating and a lot of spirituality. Yeah. No, there's no rice variety connected to my grandmother, but one of the women, Sapali, she escaped during the slave revolt in the 1750s. She's in my bloodline a couple of 8 or something ago. Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you have the right or
The Native Americans. Yeah. They had contact, like cassava was present in Africa, but probably they exchanged also with the Native Americans, because some group of Maroons, when they escaped slavery, they went to Native American settlements, and they took care of them. They learned them. They showed them the ways of the forest. Yes.
Could you perhaps just say a little bit about how the rice is used and cooked, and what other, and today perhaps, for example, which have extra nutrition?
Yeah, so to clean it, I have some cleaned one that was stamped in a pestle, with a pestle and a mortar. It's stamped and then winnowed to take out the husk, and it should be more nutritious, because right under the husk, there's where all the micronutrients are stored, so it's more nutritious, and so all the Asian rice varieties are just eaten, but the African rice variety is more used in spiritual and traditional offerings to the forefathers.
Is there also Uncle Ben's and these supermarket rice varieties eaten?
Yeah. In the capital, we have a wetland rice system since the 1940s, and that's the rice that is eaten in the capital and exported. But the Maroon rice is not exported.
Can you tell us about one ceremonial practice that requires rice?
Yes, so I during funerals, they say you need rice to enter the how do you say that?
The realm of the dead.
The realm of the dead. Yes, so they give you, especially the black rice, you get within your coffin to pay your way into the afterlife. Yes. Yeah. And then I've read one other practice where women that were about to get married, like tomorrow is your wedding day, they will offer rice to the gods for good health for their husband, prosperity for the family. But I don't know if that is still practiced today. But this book was written in the 1930s, and I see that they did that. But I'm not sure if it's still practiced today. Yeah.
Can you also please share a recipe, some few tips, how do you make a most famous dish?
The most famous
Popular dish, I mean, what you regularly eat, what do you do with, how do you eat it?
Just with everything with the stew. Yeah, it's actually rice is eaten a lot in Suriname, so it's part of almost every meal. We have households that will eat rice in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the night. So it's like a staple food. Yeah.
One more, Chris. There might be some questions on the chat as well. Did you say the same? Yes. No, I don't.
Yeah, I was just wondering, before your beginning of your timeline, any of the local foods that were before rice,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what they used to before us.
The Native Americans, they had cassava, and they still use it a lot. Cassava is the main staple food within. Actually, this is not my. I did not do anything with that, but I know from experience is that cassava is the staple food for the Native American communities, and they have lots of varieties: bitter one, sweet one, and they eat that.
So it's the rice came a lot to do with colonization. So it's like because of colonization.
Yeah, especially because they were farming rice to feed the enslaved people. They knew rice when they, if you move to what's her name, Lucia was explaining today to me that her daughter just moved to Thailand, and she's having problem with her stomach. If you move to a new place and the food is different, you will get sick. And, so you have to bring, they were taking food that the enslaved people knew with them. And, that's how all the yams, all the okra, those are African plants that went to the Americas.
Yeah, just I have one more question about you mentioned that the men would be more working in clearing the land and taking away land from the forest.
Mm-hmm.
So is this still done? So I think that there is still a lot of forest in Suriname, but do you still clear new land to grow rice, or how do you preserve the fertility of the land, or is there any thought about how not to overuse land, or how do they farm? Do they swap around? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because they don't use any fertilizer. They don't use modern. There's no how to say supplement chemicals involved. And what they'll do if this is your field, you'll have like maybe 5. Each family has a patch of forest that they can work in, and so they rotate. You'll be here maybe if you have this field now, maybe 20-30 you're here again, and then you use it for 2-3 years, maybe a third, or maybe a fourth, but then they circle a bit. It's not, there's a lot of land and a lot of forest, but the trees are huge to open. It's difficult to open a new forest field every year.
Okay, so I think that before we have the plan that we do some creative work with Lucia Valley artist who is here. Say hello. And before we do that, I would maybe like you to tell us something about the rice varieties that are in there, because I think this is something maybe everybody cannot come here right away to look at everything because it is proud of them, but maybe we'll all find the time to look at it. So what can we find in these envelopes and how these are different from each other?
Yes, yeah, so there are different. I brought, I don't know, 15 maybe. Yeah, 15
Yes.
or 18. 18 different varieties, and they're different in husk color, with an on, without an on, small seed, big seed. But sadly, I forgot to take the African rice. So everything here is just Asian rice, as far as we know. And some are planted by the name you can know how to plant it also. Is it a wetland? Does it need to be in a swampy area of your rice field, or should it be on a dry land of your field? So yeah, that's, and so based on that. Yeah, it was an Asian variety, and when I asked Shanette in the picture if she can sell me 1K, and yeah, actually she gave it to me because I.
And you all have the same nutrition. Like for example, the black olive have more nutritional values in
Yeah,
the same.
we don't know that yet because we did not test it yet, but we will do that in the. I hope to if I did one again in the future, maybe I can explain more about that. It should be different, but we don't know.
Yes, so thank you very much for coming and talking to us about this. This was very interesting. I don't know how much you have heard about these stories before. And I was really very happy to learn from you. So Niklas has a huge knowledge also in other fields. So he also worked on healing plants, and so that's another research interest he has. And he will be around. So if you stay for the creative part, you can also ask more questions. And I hope that we will continue this little conversation. So the setup for the creative part is to work with clay. This will happen in the room connects to this one. So if you go to the back of the room, there is a door that leads into the long play room where there are tables already set up with some clay. I don't know if you have enough chairs. If not, we can take more chairs from here. We can possibly also take tables from elsewhere if it's needed. And the tea and coffee is still in place, so you can help yourself to a cup of coffee or tea. And I think, yeah, we should just put our hands together for the test now. Thank you.